Well, I was working on this S-gauge 484 tender, taking it apart. I had a problem where it would stall all the time on me. It would run very well, and then all of a sudden it would just stop. And I thought perhaps I better look into it. So I took the body off this tender and began to look at these trucks. And when I pulled one of these screws out to hold the front truck, I discover inside there's a loose wire. It's come out of its holding bracket. I don't know if this shows that, but it may have just come out when I separated this, but it just tells me that it was loose anyway. So I'm going to have to remove this truck far enough that I can get this wire back in position. To do that, I'm going to have to take the mounting screws off of the circuit board on the top, because otherwise the wire won't come through the body at below. So that'll be the next step. I'm kind of glad I found this, because this engine runs really well, but it just would quit all the time in places that it shouldn't. I didn't think the wheels were dirty. I've cleaned them, so this is most definitely the problem with this this tender. Okay, I was able to separate the circuit board from the truck body on this tender. Not really difficult. There's just 4 screws that are in the corners. The thing that happens though is that a washer fell out that is mounted on the underside of the carriage, obviously to allow the truck to rotate. Now I have the ability to pull the wire through enough that I can repair this broken wire. See if I can show that to you. I'm going to have about 4 hands to do this. There's the wire right there, sticking right out. It's got a yellow end to it. It goes on the above the truck there. You can see a little bracket that has nothing in it. It's a pretty wide open bracket mounting. Looks like it's never been soldered, so it probably was real easy to pull out of there. It was probably held by the insulation of the wire more than anything else, because the wire itself is a very tiny gauge. But I suspect that'll really improve the performance of this engine once I get this done. I'm going to check the other one too. Here's a better look at that wire again from this tender. You can see how they're mounted to the top of the truck frame. It's mechanical only. I don't see any soldering here. Pretty intense circuit board. Many capacitors. It's tough to have a comfort level with tiny type stuff, and this is certainly really tough to work on cutting a wire that has a gauge of a hair, pretty much just about. Anyway, I've tried to work enough material on that wire so that I can get it mounted. And as much as I don't like to solder in proximity to components like this, I don't see any choice, because a mechanical connection with this size of wire is really tough to make sure it's firm. And as you can see, there's other wires similarly mounted. There's 2 in the front truck. There's probably 2 in the back. And I want to make sure this doesn't come apart again. So I'm going to go ahead and try to solder this. Well, here's the soldering job on this tender connection. Pretty good at this point. You almost need to have a pinhead soldering iron to work on these tiny wires. So my equipment must be out of date. But anyway, I haven't checked that other side, and then there's the back truck, so I'm going to go ahead and look at those too. But this can be remounted now, and I have safely repaired this loose connection. I have successfully soldered both of these connections. You have to remove them from the surface of the truck because the material that fills the area there between the frames, the wheel frames, is a plastic cover, and high temperature and plastic really don't go together, and I didn't want to test that theory here, so I had to loosen the connection and solder it free in the air, if you want to call it that. Anyway, it didn't take much. It's a very tiny fitting and it heats up fast. You just want to make sure it stays higher than the wire that's going to the equipment. Anyway, I'm going to remount this back on this body and then check the back. Okay, looking at the back truck on this tender, and I'm not sure if you can see this, the one wire there that's got a little red to it, that's actually never been properly inserted into the fitting. The actual copper wire, if you want to call it that, it's more silver than anything else, is actually tied at the very end, which is what I would call the clip that holds the actual insulation to keep it from pulling out. That's where the wire is actually fastened to. The other wire is pretty well inserted in there, but like I said, based on what I found with this thing, I'm going to go ahead and solder both of these as well and fix that lead there on the left. Geez, when I went to move this clip, the wire just came out. So this wire here isn't really fastened at all to this, just resting in there. If it was, there wasn't any amount of force holding it in place. So here I was working on this other truck and started to prepare to do one of the wires, and next thing I know, I'm looking at both wires being off their connection, just pulled out. So now I've got to do both. So neither one of them were fastened well. Well, I reached the point where I had to use the extra hand, as they say, to hold this thing while I soldered it. And this is what I ended up with here. Pulled away on me once, so this way I have it done right. Okay, after soldering the trucks, I should say the wiring to the trucks, and remounting the trucks on this tender, I'm now ready to reassemble the tender and put things back together. I've also got to put one of the toolboxes back on here that used to fall off. I'm not sure what kind of epoxy I can use, but that's what I was going to do here before I got carried away with this. Anyway, the equipment works great. I don't expect any more intermittent problems with this engine due to this repair. Incidentally, it's quite interesting to see that the semiconductor board on this inside this tender is probably the equivalent of a computer in terms of chips and everything else on here. There's also some capacitors which over time can be fairly annoying in deterioration. I'm hoping that low voltage doesn't create those kind of problems as it did in old appliances. Anyway, this is all set to go back together. They also use liquid wood glue. If you get yourself a glue gun, such as like this, you can do just about anything in fastening things down, just as they've done here.